Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining this special session. Today, we have a special guest, and we will highlight two prize competitions focused on fighting climate change and leveraging the XR community to achieve sustainability goals. My name is Ori Inbar. I'm the co-founder of AWE and Super Ventures, and I'm excited to have today Marcus Shingles with me to talk about Exponential Destiny's competition that is focused on driving sustainability development goals. Thank you all for joining here on AWE Live, the always on and free platform for the XR community with a non-stop stream of online events. Check out the agenda on top for what's coming up. And since you're already here, there's over 10,000 XR professionals on this platform ready and eager to connect with you. So check out the top menu, the people menu, and find your match. All right, ready to fight some climate change today. Let's start with kind of the announcement that I was really excited to make at AWE USA this June. It was sort of a call to arms to challenge to harness the power of AR and VR to fight climate change. And we announced that AWE will offer a $100,000 cash prize to teams who demonstrate real solutions to combat the biggest threat facing humanity in the next few decades, which is climate change. The good news is that XR is already having an impact. It's reducing the need for travel, it's reducing waste, manufacturing waste, and it's even reducing the need for real estate spaces. But the XR community can and should do much more. One of the biggest challenges in raising awareness to the impact of climate change is that it's really hard to fight a threat that you can't see. And thankfully, XR has the superpowers that can simulate and visualize the invisible and make the problem of climate change much more personal to every individual in the world. And it can help people see and feel the effects on their own lives and prompt them to take action against it. So just a quick reminder, this is the AWE XR Challenge to Fight Climate Change. If you're interested to learn more, to get involved, to partner with us, please submit your contact information at this link, awexr.com/XR prize. All right, so now the interesting thing is that, you know, after we made the announcements, we realized we're not alone in this quest. Exponential Destiny, in collaboration with the United Nations and Virtual World Society, initiated another grand prize competition, the Metaverse for Sustainability Goals. So to learn more about it and the impact it could have, put your hands together for CEO and founder of Exponential Destiny. Give it up for Marcus Shingles. Hey, Marcus.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Ori. Pleasure.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm in beautiful Mexico City.
In Mexico City today. Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
One of my favorite places. Yeah, I'm here for work, and then I'm headed to Thailand in a few days. So busy schedule.
Glad we were able to catch you here. So Marcus, let's start by kind of tell us a bit about yourself and briefly about the program and how people can get involved.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. You know, I think you and I, Ori, when we discussed this, our goal was for these competitions we're running, which are really large ones, they have good prize purses associated with them. I think our goal is to get the AWE community as a community that's really represented in participating in these prize competitions. You know, this Exponential Destiny is a 501c3 nonprofit, so we're doing this purely as an educational initiative with a few specific objectives, which I'll get into. But we have teamed up specifically with the ITU, that's the agency of the United Nations that's responsible for digital communications. So they really are going to be the body of the UN that's focused on Metaverse, just like they're the ones who are driving artificial intelligence and satellite communications, internet communications, et cetera. That's their primary responsibility. I've been having a working relationship with them for a while. When I was the CEO of the X Prize Foundation, X Prize launched the AI for Good initiative with the UN, with the ITU. And so my former collaborators on that initiative called me up from the UN recently and asked if I'd come do an opening keynote on Metaverse at their Digital Transformation Summit that happened this last February. And myself and the Exponential Destiny team, we came out there and we delivered this keynote. And we actually announced this prize. We announced that it was launching, and then in Kigali, Rwanda in June, we announced the official start of it. Just a little bit of context so you understand who Exponential Destiny is. As I mentioned, we're a 501c3 nonprofit. It's actually, it originated from a mentorship program I did with a high school in South Central Los Angeles. I'm based in LA, and I reached out to a local high school back in 2015. I somewhat adopted the high school to try to create new curriculum to teach entrepreneurship to individuals in low-income, under-resourced, under-budgeted public school districts. And those individuals that I worked with when they were 14, 15-year-olds went on to launch their own businesses, be relatively successful, but they also became my co-founders of this nonprofit we launched. And so I'm the old guy on the team, but the rest of my leadership team and my co-founder, Marco Vargas, and the rest of the team are all youth leaders from South Central Los Angeles and other communities that are coming from under-resourced communities. And we've specifically launched the nonprofit to focus on virtual reality, augmented reality. This is well before Facebook changed their name to Meta. So we've been doing this for at least 2.5 years. Initially, they started to shadow me on commercial projects I was doing. I was an executive at Bain Consulting. I also led the innovation practice around disruptive tech at Deloitte before I took the X Prize role as CEO. So I've been working with commercial clients of Fortune 500 companies with this type of technology for a while. And I started to do a lot more work a couple of years ago in this space. And everybody was on COVID, so we're all on Zoom calls. So I just started to have that team of young people that I was mentoring. I said, why don't you guys just sign an NDA and I'll tell the CEO of whatever company I'm advising that you're there to learn. And so I'd be having a call with a CEO of a large company, and you'd see 10 or 11 Exponential Destiny icons pop up. And it was my team just basically listening and learning, trying to understand the business of advisory services and consulting, but specific to how can virtual reality, we work more with VR than XR, than AR. But they just heard the whole dialogue I would have with a brokerage firm or a consumer product company or a financial service advisory firm or a group of developers that were building an airport in Thailand, those types of individuals and companies that I was advising. And let's use VR to actually use within your businesses. How could we use it? And let's start using it. And so they shadowed me on those projects, and I realized they're an exceptionally good resource at this. They're digitally native. They intuitively get into VR, and this is the young people on my team. They were intuitively good at it. So they made great consultants at virtual reality. And before you know it, they were handling the meetings with the CEOs of these companies without me. And they basically got upskilled into professional careers in this space, working on professional projects. One of my colleagues, his name is Juan Felix. He actually worked with me on a project. He worked with me on a project with a consumer product company, kind of shadowed me, but by the end of it, he was very proficient in virtual reality, Ori. And the CEO of the company wanted to move forward with the recommendation. I had suggested that they build a whole department around this to train their 200,000 distributors globally in virtual reality. And they asked me if there's someone that I'd recommend that they could hire. And at that time, I wasn't familiar with the AWE community, although then I could have probably referred someone from your community. But I said, what about Juan? And they're like, that 19-year-old that was on the project, we loved him, but we just don't want to steal him from you. And I'm like, no, that's the whole idea. Employ him. So he went and quit his job at Target stores stocking shelves to now he runs the virtual reality department for $1 billion plus consumer product company. So when we saw that happening, we're like, we can do this. We can upskill individuals, particularly those that need the upskilling coming from public schools and low-income communities. And so we created Exponential Destiny to do that. And we've done over 30 projects commercially. And we turned our attention towards doing work with schools, helping. Think about this. Juan, who became a great Metaverse consultant, he's even better if he's consulting a client, and that client is actually a public school that he graduated from 3 years ago to figure out how to use it in the classroom. So we've done a big project with the 6th largest school district in the United States, Broward County, Florida. Over 6 months, we took 30 headsets down to Florida and got them all in it and tried to look at new educational pedagogies for teaching and education learning that we'd help the school with. And now we just finished last week a big project we did in Chicago and two high schools in LA. So that's a little background on Exponential Destiny. What we realized was we need more resources. Like, we're starting to do a lot of work globally, a lot of schools globally. They want us to take this methodology and come in and help schools transform. So we said, what's a good way to get a sense for who's out there that has a skill set in places like Botswana and Nigeria or Jamaica or Guatemala or El Salvador, places where we had schools that wanted to work with us because we needed resources. So the origination of the competition we launched was almost like a big job interview. We just wanted to put some feelers out there to see who was available in these communities and who was good at this stuff. And I, with my former XPRIZE hat on as former CEO of XPRIZE, I said, well, I know how to run global prize competitions. So why don't we talk to the UN about launching the Metaverse for SDGs global prize and virtual reality competition. And so they've been very supportive. They jumped on it. They've given us a lot of venues to go present this and share this with the world. And yeah, I mean, on this call, we can talk about exactly what that competition entails, but that was the basis for it. That was the basis for, it was the history of Exponential Destiny in summary and kind of how we got into launching this competition.
Marcus, it's really interesting that, you were a CEO of the XPRIZE, and now you're doing this. So what are some of the learnings you are applying from that time that you were heading the XPRIZE to the SDG competition?
Well, one thing that's really relevant for this discussion is when you run these global competitions, it's quality, not quantity. As a matter of fact, the more people you get interested that aren't real serious, it just puts more administration and overhead and babysitting, quite frankly, because you've got more people you have to respond to, and then they atrophy from the competition. They were never really that serious to begin with. So the focus when you do any competition like this is to get quality, meaning get some individuals that are passionate about this, that really want to apply their skills. We raised quite a bit of money. I'll talk about it in a second. I mean, we've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars that we're passing on completely to as prize purses. I personally do this 100% pro bono, so there's no commercial interest that I have in any of this. But yeah, it's quality versus quantity, which is kind of why, Ori, when you and I connected, that's why I wanted to speak to the AWE community, because this is the type of community, people that are already interested in virtual reality, want to take what they know about virtual reality, maybe even get some additional training to up their skills even more, but apply it into something fun on nights and weekends over the next 8 to 10 months. We're giving a long runway, right? Nights and weekends, get with your friends, get with your colleagues, and start to create an environment that builds empathy, awareness, and education around one of the Sustainable Development Goals out of the 17. You don't have to solve the goal. You just have to build an environment that teaches the issues and opportunities with that SDG, brings it to life. Empathy, that's the value of virtual reality. You can do things in there that really promote and build empathy, first person point of view, and awareness. And whoever does that most interestingly and creatively and uses their imagination the best, it's a little bit of a subjective interpretation, but those 17 finalists are all going to get cash prizes. And then we'll have a summit with the United Nations next June in which you'll be invited to come on the stage and receive the reward and demo of what you've done.
Very cool. Yeah. Really admire this whole initiative. So I'm sure that many of our listeners are interested in the money part. So you mentioned $100,000. Who could get their hands on it? What do they need to do?
Well, let me do this. I'll take a little bit of step back because those that are interesting, I want to demystify the complication of this thing. It's pretty straightforward. Can you see my screen, Ori?
Yeah, it's up.
Okay, so I don't want to get into
now. Yeah, with you. Okay, yeah,
you can see it. Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, so there, by the way, is all the young people, and then notice my age is just listed as older because I don't want to. I'm like double the years of these folks, but yeah. So the focus was we already know virtual reality can affect several sustainable development goals. These are number 4, 10, 3, 8, and 1 are ones that we think it can specifically affect. Virtual reality and Web 3.0. I mean, we've seen this at the opening keynote we did at the UN. My team specifically talked about these areas in the work that we're doing and the work we're seeing in general. So it's a powerful thing. Many of your listeners and people in your community, or you probably have seen this graphic or the study that PwC has seen or produced. Pretty important one, quite frankly. These numbers are just pretty extraordinary. I mean, they're multiples, right? They're even a 10% increase in effectiveness around education is a good improvement. These are much higher than that. The other thing, Ori, about this is this study's from 2020, which means the tech they used to do the study was 2019. As we know, that tech is completely outdated. That's like 3-4 years ago. That's like 30 years ago in this space, right? So there's real promise here if this is the impact it has on education. That's, by the way, why we started to take this into public high schools and see if we can get these same statistics, if not better. So we're doing our own efficacy studies and research about applying this in a public high school in a low-income community, because this study was more on corporate training. But they're powerful. So the goal here was just the SDGs. If you talk to folks from the UN, the real challenge right now is people don't know what the SDGs are. They don't know these goals. They don't know the plans behind these goals. They don't know what the targets are and the mission is. So we thought, what if we could get the same level of engagement around education and learning around the SDGs? And that's how we created this competition, right? From a timeline perspective, we launched it. We announced it in March. We kind of kicked it off in Kigali, Rwanda at a big summit in June. And next June is when we're going to have the final award ceremony. So the competition will kind of end around March. Now, why did you ask me, Ori, what's something I learned at, in my hat at XPRIZE and just running these competitions? You got to give a long runway, because people have their day jobs, and you can't really expect anyone's going to buckle down and do full-time focused on creating these spaces. So I don't think it's going to take anyone more than several weeks all in if they work full time to create a space, but we just spread that over the next year, basically. So people can really don't feel pressure and anxiety to put too much time outside of their day job. There's a good balance they can have. The objective is to learn a new skill set. So we are trying to do kind of a MOOC, a massive online open courseware of training around virtual reality. Pretty basic. I mean, some people in your community that are already pretty advanced, I don't know how helpful we're going to be. They'll find their own resources. As a matter of fact, some of the people in your community might even want to appear on one of our sessions to address the 700 people we've registered, particularly outside of the US and some underdeveloped countries. It's our chance as a community to educate others. So if anyone from the AWE community wants to be a guest speaker on one of our information sessions to talk to that group, we'd love to have you. But we're giving basic training around how to get in there and learn and create in these environments on the platform that they choose. We think that that's a valuable skill set. We think it's akin to learning how to code and develop the internet back in 1990, right before things got really popular in 1992 with the World Wide Web. We think that's the timing with Metaverse right now. It's a good skill set to be an early adopter. And that's one of the objectives of this competition, is to really try to get folks into this field, understanding it, and get them some training, and then have them apply that training around the SDGs. And that's the goal of the competition, is take what we've teaching you or what you learn with your own resources, and then create a team. And this is kind of some parameters, Ori. A team can have 2 people, you and someone else, up to 6 people. And that would be a team. And that team can be in an age group of 14 to 18-year-olds, which is its own category. And then we have another competition for everyone 19-year-olds and above. So that way we don't have college and universities competing against high school students in this competition. And therefore, if you think about it, we're not going to have just 17 SDG winners. We're going to have 34, because we've got 17 for the 14, 18-year-old age group and 17 winners for the SDGs in the 19-year-old and above. So people would just fall in the category based on their age. The third objective is become part of this like-minded community. We're having a lot of fun with it. It's part of the UN ITU organization. And ultimately, we're going to produce this immersive and experiential metaverse around the Sustainable Development Goals that's open to the public. And it'll be a resource and an asset that's a public utility that describes the importance of the SDG, builds awareness around the issues and opportunities, and then promotes empathy, an emotional experience and connection that drives to action. That is the objective of the competition. It's not a competition to solve the SDGs. We're not trying to figure out, well, how do you solve for zero poverty or no hunger, et cetera. Doesn't mean you can't put where the research is showing that there might be solutions as part of your narrative and your story you build in virtual reality. Perhaps that builds empathy and awareness, but this is not a competition of who came up with the best idea to solve it. It's strictly educating and awareness and empathy. We announced it in February. There we are at the United Nations, announcing it in Geneva, Switzerland at our presence there during the opening keynote. In June, we were in Kigali, Rwanda. They had 5,000 youth leaders attend from all over the world. They had over, I think, 80 countries represented, and we were there to share Metaverse and virtual reality and likewise, and we officially launched a competition. Between now and August, as we hope to do these information sessions every 2 weeks, we have a YouTube channel where all the we record every session, and then people who couldn't make the session live can go watch it on our YouTube channel, where we have special training and awareness, not just the technical training, but also some design thinking, persona mapping, journey mapping, storytelling, some other aspects that make it important if you're going to try to reach the objective here with the competition. March is when we'll end the competition, and June is when we will actually have an award ceremony. Tentatively, it's June, and we're actually talking to the United Nations ITU about having a separate summit just on the metaverse, versus trying to take our award ceremony and append it to one of their existing summits that they already have. We're very much
the same time that we will announce the prize winner for the climate change challenge. So June 1st.
Yeah, so I think, like we talked about, I think we should have the winner of what you do at the UN ITU summit that we have, especially if we make it metaverse specific, meaning we have a standalone summit just on the metaverse with the ITU, which is where we're headed. But absolutely, Ori, I mean, besides Ori, besides you actually speaking at the event, because it would be an honor to have you there, definitely whoever comes out on top with what you've worked on in your competition, it's someone that we would demo and feature at the event. If people are interested, it's quite simple. We have a website, sdgmetaverseprize.org. When you get to that website, you'll see option number 4 is register to compete. Once you browse some of the information and get familiar with other aspects. When you go to that section, you'll notice there's 2 registrations. There's a pre-registration, which just lets us know that you exist. So everyone should do that immediately. That's just me as an individual. Answer some questions for us. You know, what age category you're going to be in, what SDG you think you're going to focus on. You don't have to determine it specifically at this point, but where you're leaning. And just some basic questions. And then that gets you registered as an individual. Then you're invited to our info sessions and the communications, et cetera. And then when you're ready, you would want to register yourself with a team, which means you and other individuals would officially enter the competition as a team. And you can do that between now and December, your team registration. But as an individual, you'd want to go online right now and get set up and register for that. You asked, Ori, from a prize money perspective, these are our sponsors so far. We've raised over $200,000 to date. I suspect, I don't want to say this is official, but I would suspect that we will double or triple that number, because we will be raising all the way until next June. And I've got some large corporate sponsors and a few others that we're talking to that I think are promising, that really like what we're doing and will focus on the prize purse. Quite honestly, we haven't even put a lot of focus on raising the money for the prize purse. We went out to some original friends and family and very quickly got a good reaction, so we knew we could launch this thing. But the fundraising will continue, so the prize purse will continue to go up. The funds, we're very transparent on the funds. It's the vast majority of the funds are going to go to the 17 finalists. So each of the 17 SDGs, there'll be a winner that will receive a prize purse times 2, because there's 2 age groups. So there'll be 34 winners that we'll give an allocation to. And then, of course, there's going to be the overall best of show, best experience of show, that will win the grand prize for the 2 age groups. And then potentially we're going to have funding for those that become the finalists to bring them to the UN. We're thinking it'll probably be in Geneva at the UN, and they can demo and speak and receive their prize purse. We also have some money that we're using to fund Oculus Quest headsets. That price is outdated. Everyone knows they increased their price by $100. So for individuals or teams that can't afford headsets, so they don't feel like they can't participate because they simply can't afford the headset, we have a process where they can apply based on financial need. And we will try our best to use a portion of the prize purse funding that we've set aside to actually pay for people's headsets. We've also requested through a Meta Platforms application process to get some headsets donated. And then we use a minor percentage, about 10-15%, just for prize operations administration. That's to pay for the young people on my team and some of the people from the ITU that are going to be administering this. Again, my role is purely pro bono, so I'm not receiving any.
So Marcus, let's pause here for a second. And I think, just to clarify, we're talking about 2 programs here, competitions that are focusing on similar goals, really kind of advancing sustainability and driving awareness. But let's talk for a second about the differences and how they kind of complement each other. And I think kind of the overarching idea here is that, if your kind of program is focused mostly on awareness, education, enabling underserved societies to actually get into this world and drive some initiatives there, The AWE prize is focused more actually on solutions. Let's build XR solutions and to fight climate change, and that requires to bring together audiences, right? It's the young people, it's the people that you're kind of targeting that are maybe in Africa and some other places where they actually see the climate change up in the in their own environment, how it's impacting them. So kind of bring these people together along with climate change experts, because XR folks are great at XR, the climate change are great at climate change aspects, but they never come together and they're not aware of the potential. And I've read in the last few years a bunch of books and watched a bunch of documentaries about solutions for climate change. And one thing was completely absent, and that is the use of AR and VR to address these things. And it just shows the lack of awareness. So I think, the competitions that we're kind of initiating here, the primary goal is really to create more awareness. If you put some money behind it, of course, it helps drive the awareness and more people get excited about it. But how do you see the differences and how these two programs complement each other?
No, I mean, I think that's why you and I, when we originally spoke, we were excited to share with the community together what we're doing, because they're very complementary. I love the idea that you've taken one specific area and focused on a solution, because it'll be interesting to see with your crowdsourcing, that's what a competition is, a prize. When you crowdsource ideas, again, putting my former X Prize hat on, you get this bell curve of a lot of people trying the same idea and some people on the left of trying some ideas that don't work, some fail and learn cycles. But on the far right, you get some real gold nuggets when you do this type of competition. You're getting the needle in the haystack to come to you, basically. So I think it's a great application that you're doing to actually say, I want to think solutions, like get with some climate change people, UXR community, and figure out, put your heads together. And let's see what we come up with. I think it's a brilliant concept. I'm really interested in seeing the results of it. Yes, but to your point, though, our focus was, we weren't as ambitious, especially if looking at all 17 SDGs. Yes, we were very much focused on what's a more engaging, interactive way that people will start paying attention to these global issues that we're not getting from going onto a website and reading about the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. This is very important work that the UN has been doing over years. The average person you ask have you heard about the 17 SDGs? They're not even aware what they are, let alone to go a step further to know specifics within each SDG in terms of how big the issues actually are and what do we have to do as nations and as a globe, as a world community to actually, what's the plan and when do we have to achieve these plans? So it's such an important thing that so many people are working on, but our goal was, could we combine that community with the virtual reality community and create imaginary, expressive worlds that you could tell stories in? The thing that's also we're focused on is we wanted, even though we're targeting low-income communities as a skill set that might lift them into new economy jobs, the competition by no means is limited to that. It's everybody in the world. It's, we've got some top universities that are participating in this at this point, so it'll be fun and it'll be fierce and it'll be exciting. But the thing that we've noticed is our team, we don't use Unity and some of the high-end back office technologies to create these environments. We try to figure out, how can I use a platform that is so, basically these platforms have become so user-friendly, we call them non-coding coding environments. I can build a website in virtual reality, so to speak, an immersive experience without even writing a single line of code now, because of platforms like Engage, Mesmer, Gatherings, Spatial, Horizon. These platforms are now like PowerPoint in 3D. So the reason we think a lot of people can compete on a competition like this is because we've done this. We build out amazing environments that a few years ago you had to call like a high-end technical resource or even graphic designer, pay them tens of thousands of dollars to actually get something built. Now, using relatively free software with graphics, 3D images that you can pull in that are relatively free on TurboSquid and other marketplaces, you can go create things in this space that bring stories to life, almost like a professional was doing a few years ago, using very expensive software and hardware. So it's pretty amazing. And that's what we're encouraging people to go discover, is that it kind of overnight, these platforms became creation environments, not just consumption environments that, that anyone can learn and build and create more effective communications in.
And that's, you know, perfect time for a call to action for XR companies that do have these kind of no-code creation tools for immersive experiences to contribute, to kind of join the community, the prize, and again, part of the education is just educating people how to use these tools and how to create stuff with it. So I think, you know, if you're listening, reach out. Now, I want to switch to just talk a little bit about some of the potential solutions to specifically, you know, climate change. And, you know, we talked about the power of XR to visualize and simulate things and make it personal and more emotional. So what if, you know, there are so many maps that are showing how by 2050, different parts of the world will be covered in water. But usually it's just a statistic, you know, even if you look at the map, it doesn't really speak to you. But what if you see this kind of image when you pull up your phone in a street in New York City, and you see a scientific representation of how the kind of the level of the water in that street by, say, 2050. I think, you know, it's like a lot of the special effects that the Weather Channel has been doing recently, right? Where you can actually see the weather and feel the weather in the studio. I think we need to kind of look at some of these approaches.
Yeah, I mean,
to fight it.
Yeah, I mean, Ori, like this is striking pretty close to home, because I don't know if you saw the national news. I don't know if it was international news, but nationally, because I had a lot of friends calling me up and sending me this link from, like, it was all over CNN and everywhere. Was, you know, last week they were talking about the mega flood that is expected in California in the next 20 to 30 years. Did you see that news report? It was a big deal in the US.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So this is basically because of climate change effects and atmospheric changes in atmospheric pressure and so much more humidity after droughts. They're anticipating, this was, I think, Nature magazine or some really reputable source came out with this research saying that within the next 20 to 30 years, I think it was 20 to 30 years, California will get a mega flood that will be the most devastating, costly, most expensive thing that has ever hit the planet. I mean, it was that type of extreme, you know, much different than the big earthquake that California, like, it was dramatically more costly and loss of life than that type of thing that most Californians are fearing are worried about. But, like, if, to your point, you could go take Sacramento, which is one of the areas they think would be completely underwater with a mega flood, and actually take the topography of Sacramento, take a drone out there with a LiDAR, take the topography, literally bring that topography in virtual reality. I mean, you can do that now with an iPhone, right? In a drone, you know, a low-cost drone. You could take that, bring that in there, so you feel like you're kind of in Sacramento in that topography, but then you can literally use special effects to create this whole tidal wave of you know, I think what they said, the scientists say it would basically be rainfall, a downpour of rain that would be equivalent to normally what happens in 3 years happening in 3 days, something like that. I mean, you could simulate that effect to really give people an appreciation for, you know, the reality of what the world will be like if this climate issues continue. And I think a solution like that, I don't know, maybe we're giving people a good idea for the competition. That one might be good for your competition and my competition, because that builds education, awareness, and empathy. Definitely empathy, because you feel like you're part of it. And then, to your point, how do you then solve for that? You know, then people can start talking about what's the solution here. So, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And the other image I wanted to show for inspiration mostly is this. This is from 2009. So, guys, this is like before pretty much the iPhone. It's a project by Columbia University where they used data from sensors that were kind of tracking pollution particles, and then visualizing it in real time as you walk on the street in Manhattan. And this was possible back then. It's even more possible today. I mean, there's so much data being collected about what's happening around the world and where it's going to go. Let's take all that sensor data and visualize it in the field of view. So that's more on the AR side. And on the VR side, you know, to your point, that's where you can go to different places, not necessarily in your neighborhood or where you travel, but anywhere else to kind of feel and get more empathy for those possible outcomes, and then, you know, get to fight against it in whatever means possible.
Yeah, I mean, But another fun example, like in the Engage platform, you can get into Engage, pull up a scenario where you're underwater, you're in an ocean, and then you can start pulling in like plastic bottles and trash, and then copy that plastic bottle like 300 times or 3,000 times. And you can start to create this simulation of you're in an ocean polluted, like getting a real sense for how polluted. And if you kept it true to form, meaning it was actually per cubic inch of water, this is how much trash is in the water, and you actually mimic that in virtual reality and say, like, this is actually a true representation of the amount of trash that's currently in our ocean. I mean, that's a great way to build empathy, right? And that's something within a few hours, you can create that environment in virtual reality right now on some of these platforms, and then you can make fish that are suffering, and, you can animate fish to, it's almost like making theater. And that's what we want people to do with this competition, is tell a story. The thing that's interesting too, Ori, is like the reason we're very passionate about this, especially bringing it into low-income schools and communities, is, they teach coding in school now, especially in public schools. And it's kind of like 30 years too late. I mean, the time to teach a student about how to get a career in coding probably was not right at the cusp of AI being able to do coding better than humans, which is where we're now, but probably back in 1991, right as the internet was coming into scene. That was a great time to teach people how to code these in websites. This is the time to teach people how to code the metaverse, how to get in the metaverse and create. And because it's become so user-friendly, almost the same functionality it takes for a young person to post a TikTok video and edit it and put it on TikTok. It's almost that type of thinking and features and functionality in the software to use. So it's not real difficult and not technical, which is good, because young people in these communities that are being told you need to learn how to code, they get discouraged when they realize maybe, yeah, my buddy over here is real good at coding, but that's not for me. I'm not a computer programmer. I can't do this. But rather than saying that means I'm not going to be relevant in the new jobs economy, wait a second, there's this metaverse. I'm hearing a lot about that. Wait, I can get in there and start creating environments by just understanding how to use the features on the software, like I do when I post something on my iPhone or my phone on social media. It's not that much more complicated. And then the thing that's interesting is the skill set that rises to the top in that environment is creativity and storytelling. And so there's a young lady on our team, Samantha, who's on the leadership team at Exponential Destiny. She's an art major, and by far, we all default to her when it comes to, Sam, before we get in there and throwing objects around and just start putting a bunch of tech stuff into this environment, can you please tell us, like, how do we make a soothing environment that's got good feng shui, that tells a story, that stimulates enough but not too much, so people can come through this and really make sense of this virtual environment and tells a story and produces a narrative? Well, Samantha's really good at that. And so when you reach out to young people and they know that even the person in the room who's very musically inclined or creatively inclined, that they actually can excel in this environment, that they can become a digital designer in a new tech job, and that's the skill set that will make them exceptionally good at it, that builds their confidence in really big ways. And that's also when we take it to high schools now, we do this whole process with them over 6 months to try to get them upskilled and then creating new curriculum in these types of environments. The whole class participates. The young men, the young women, no matter what their passion or interest is, if they're right brain or left brain, everyone finds a role. And that's kind of the exciting part of the field right now.
Marcus, I wanted to ask you about, there's this, you mentioned this notion that, people hear about the metaverse and say, hey, what is it? Can we use it somehow? So I'm kind of wondering about your work with the United Nations. How do they even understand do they understand the metaverse? Do they see how it kind of even fits with what they're trying to do? And how would you describe the collaboration with them so far?
Well, it's been fun, because what we did was, I said the relationship started with them asking me to do the opening keynote at their Digital Transformation Summit in Geneva back at the end of February. So February 28th is when I was asked to do the opening keynote. So originally it started with me going there and doing the keynote on Metaverse for the SDGs. I just pasted in the chat here for everyone a video link to that keynote, so you can see the UN in Geneva and the ITU Summit. It was fun, Ori, because for those in the community that watch that opening keynote, you're going to love it, because it's going to crack you up, because with a straight face, I got up there in front of the UN delegation. So this is like 1,000 delegates being translated in 6 languages on a very obnoxiously large screen, like way bigger than an IMAX screen. I'm up there with 6 young people from South Central Los Angeles with me, my colleagues and my co-founders. And with a very straight face, Ori, I start off, I mean, I'm the California looking guy, stereotypical California guy on stage about to share with his audience the metaverse. Nobody, and this was back in February, most people didn't have any idea what the metaverse was. So with a very straight face, I get into this shtick where I pretend that I'm pitching them on a NFT for the SDGs, and that we're launching the SDG metaverse land, and we're selling real estate in that metaverse land, right? And I'm kind of hamming it up, but people think I'm serious because I'm not like cracking a smile. And I even say, like, just like Snoop Dogg had his Snoop Universe metaverse where someone bought a property in there for $450,000. You know, I showed that news clipping, and I said, well, we're doing the same, but instead of in our metaverse for SDGs, it's Snoop, it's the SDG dog. It's Snoop.
It was hilarious, and you know, it was especially hilarious because people thought it's serious, you know, because everybody was doing this at the time.
It could have been serious. That's the funny thing is I literally could be pitching it and it'd be so obnoxious, but that's what people are doing. But the reason I made that point was to answer your question. I assume the audience the attendees probably were as confused as everybody else when it comes to the quote unquote metaverse. But I did that to say, look, you probably saw these headlines around NFTs and Sotheby's selling an NFT for $24 million, you know, the Ape Yacht Club stuff. I said, the reason I'm joking about this is because I want us to realize with all this hype around metaverse and NFTs and all this stuff, we're going to get into that wormhole around all that commercialism and hype. And you're not going to recognize, it's going to overshadow the fact that this technology can be really used for some substantive value around educating people in ways you can never educate before. And then I showed them the PwC study and the work that we're doing in Chicago and LA, et cetera. I didn't say it. The teachers from Chicago actually got on stage and shared what the impact it's having, and the students, and how it can lift people out of poverty. And that's when Juan, who I mentioned, who was working at Target stores, and a year later, he's got a job getting paid a professional salary working for a company, head of their VR department. He got up and said that, you know, so we started to say, like, don't listen to all this noise and stuff, you know, ignore Marcus and how he started this thing. That was a joke. But in all seriousness, like, let's not overshadow from where this has real potential. So if you watch the whole keynote, you'll get a good sense for how we're actually applying it in schools. We try to show some of the efficacy data that we're starting to collect. We're definitely in research and experimentation mode. I mean, that's what we're doing. It's actually more of a behavioral science exercise than it is a technology exercise, because the tech is easy. The hard part is getting into a public school system that's very centered on their ways and trying to transform one pilot school, which is what we do. We ask for forgiveness instead of permission. So we don't try to go top down with the superintendent and get all the schools on board. We go to a really innovative principal. We say, do you want to do something a little risky, a little daring, but very pioneering and innovative? Let's see if we can apply this in your classroom with your students and teachers, and see if we can't come up with completely brand new ways to teach and educate that you didn't have before that's very engaging to students. Let's pilot that over the next 6 months. We're coming in with all the funding. Mesmerize gave us the funding for these last two projects. Verizon gave it to us for the first one. We're coming with all the funding. We'll bring all the assets. And when we leave, we want you to establish this in your school as the new normal. We want you to create a course around this, which is what Chicago is doing and LA is doing. And we hope to take 2 of the seniors we worked with in the school, and Exponential Destiny wants to hire them and put them on the next school we help.
So you feel like the United Nations itself, you know, that as an organization, are they enamored by the metaverse just because it's a new shiny thing, or you feel like they're starting to understand how it could make an impact?
The ITU, the reason the ITU was interested in doing this with us is the ITU is the agency responsible for looking at interoperability, global standards, protocols to make sure this can scale equitably. I mean, that's their focus with the internet, is how does the internet become a global thing that everyone can use in every part of the world? Everyone has access to it and it's affordable, and we can scale it quickly by having certain standards, and it works well properly for everyone. So their interest is, the reason they were interested in doing the competition was, for them, this is what we talked about, Ori. We're going to have next June 17 finalists, but some people are going to be using HP headsets. Some are going to be using Oculus Quest or Meta headsets. Some are going to be using the Engage platform. Some are going to be using Spatial. Some are going to use Horizon, et cetera, right? We're doing that on purpose. We're going to have all these amazing environments. We're going to have 17 SDGs, but they're not interlinked and there's no interoperability. They can't scale. But that's because the pilot of this is going to show the roadmap that we need to create for the ITU to make something like that be a true metaverse. So we don't have people that can only go into one SDG, but they can't portal into the next one because everything's not connected. We're not going to have an internet of virtual reality until we figure that out. So to answer your question, they're interested in, you know, it's kind of a crawl, walk, run. We're in the crawl phase. They want to say, like, let's crowdsource the SDGs for educational purposes. That would be amazing. Let's see what the potential the crowd comes up with in terms of teaching and empathy, awareness, education. But at the same time, when we're done with this, we're going to have a really nice picture of what this could be once we figure out interoperability, infrastructure, architecture to make sure the metaverse becomes a global standard that people can use and it values, adds value to the world, which is what the ITU is responsible for. So they're highly interested in that, and they see the potential of that. The other thing I'll mention is at the summit we had in Kigali, Rwanda, they had 4,000, 5,000 young people. There's about 1,000 in person. I would take credit for this like it was our team, but we had nothing to do with it. Just the topic of the metaverse was so interesting to people that we were swarmed. I mean, we're definitely the draw of the whole summit where people wanted to see metaverse and what that meant. These are young, youth leaders. So it's quite interesting.
Fantastic. All right, folks, if you're listening and you are already working on some solution, whether it's to one prize or the next, please share here. Or if you have any questions, we'll be happy to address. We got several hundred submissions so far of people that are just interested to learn more about this competition. And for our followers, we will announce more details and the actual guidelines for how to compete at AWE EU in Lisbon on October 20 and 21st. And Marcus will be there as well to talk more about this program on a panel with some more experts. So it could be a great place to kind of kickstart your work, but don't wait. I mean, there's if you want to learn more, just submit it today. Again, the URL is awexr.com/xrprize. Pretty straightforward. And Marcus, you want to kind of remind people where to go and how to kind of get involved?
Yeah, SDG, Sustainable Development Goal, SDG metaverseprize.org. And you'll find a lot of information out there. You'll find the opening keynote at the UN that we did on that first page. And then, of course, section 4 up at the top is where you start to register yourself as an individual. So you're on our community list. Start participating in the competition.
Fantastic. And what's again? Let's remind people kind of the call to action for people in the like companies, established companies, entrepreneurs, experts in XR. How do you want them to get involved?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Ori, our goal with this was it would be really unfortunate if no one from the core AWE community didn't win at least one of those 17 SDG prizes for the Metaverse prize. I mean, this is the community that is pioneering the thought leadership in this space. It's the enthusiasts in this space. So, whether you compete just with others in this community, or if you wanted to work with us, we could even team some of you up so you can be mentors for some of the other teams that we have with people around the world. From, like I said, we've got 700 people. At least 500 of those people are from all other places of the world, like a lot of people from countries within Africa, South and Latin America, Southeast Asia. So if you wanted to even offer yourself up as a team member to another team that's somewhere out there so you can mentor them, this community would be excellent for that as well. Or just get in it to win it for what Ori's doing and what we're doing. It should be a lot of fun. You have the potential to earn a good prize purse. And we'd love to be handing you a check or recognizing you at the United Nations Summit that we plan on having with the ITU next June.
Absolutely. Fantastic. I think, when we launched the Augie Awards, which is kind of a competition for just across different categories in XR later this year, we will make sure, of course, the XR prize will be there with the climate change challenge, but we'll also include your competition so that, again, creating this kind of synergy between the groups so we get people to meet and create some amazing awareness and solutions for climate change. So we have here a comment from Alexandra. We're creating some exciting initiatives in Miami around the SDGs and would love to collaborate with you and your teams. Please advise who can reach out to, and thanks. We would love to team up with you.
Yeah, on our end, I just put my email, marcus@exponentialdestiny.org, or you can email info@sdgmetaverseprize.org. But yeah, I've already had, Ori, was pretty cool because just by you making this announcement, even before the session started, I actually had at least a dozen people that reached out to me saying they're doing something really interesting with the SDGs. And I will tell you all this: when we have this summit with the ITU next June, which is what we plan on trying to have it just as a Metaverse or Web 3.0 type of summit, the whole goal there would be sharing with the rest of the world use cases and examples of how the Metaverse is being used for good around any of the SDGs. So that's why Ori would be a guest there to come speak. Any of you that are working on an initiative, there's might be a lot of ways we can collaborate, but at a minimum, as a community with the AWE and the Virtual World Society and Daniel over there at VWS, I'm a board member on the Virtual World Society as well with Tom Furness. Our goal is, as a community, let's go share with the world everything we know about how VR and XR and Metaverse is being used for very positive things, and we'll have a whole summit around that. If I have some sponsors right now that it's looking pretty good. It's quite a big ask to sponsor a big summit like that. Most of it will be in virtual reality or desktop platform for the Metaverse, but there'll be a significant group that comes to Geneva if that's where we end up having it. And so if any of you also interested in businesses want to help us fundraise or support this, you're passionate around one of the SDGs, either Ori's competition or the one we're doing, please come talk to us, because you can put your funding towards one of the SDGs, and then we'll give you, a lot of honorable recognition for supporting that.
Awesome. You already got great thanks from Alexandra. And there's another question from Dace, who is asking, what's the best way to network and make matches with other interested potential teams and individuals? And I would say, first, join sessions like this. You'll see in the attendee list a lot of people that are already interested in that. And, platforms like AWE Live, again, over 10,000 professionals working in XR. Just look for people interested in climate change. You can find a nice collection of people, nice matches. And, from our side, I can make a commitment that once we get all the submissions of people interested in the prize, we will kind of connect everybody together. So we'll be able to find some matches, join forces with other teams. And we're also kind of working hard to bring climate change experts, from different conservation organizations and so on. So we'll create an environment that you can meet with these people, learn from them, they can learn from you, and then create those highly necessary solutions to fight climate change and sustainability in general. Are there other ideas, Marcus?
Well, on our end, we have a Facebook community page. Facebook's got this kind of vanilla platform they use for creating community. So I just put the link there. That's a place where you can go and you can see people that are looking for team members. You can see people sharing assets with one another. You can see people, if they found a SDG expert on one of the SDGs, they might, share who that person is and have a side meeting with that person to hear about the SDG as they think about how to bring it to life through the competition. But where I would start for us is if you just register yourself as an individual. Of course, it doesn't cost anything, of course. As a matter of fact, we're actually trying to buy headsets, like I mentioned, for teams that can't afford it. So it's meant to just be a fun, positive thing that we go through over the next 9 months.
Awesome. We're almost out of time. If you have last minute questions, please post now. And I think we'll wrap up, Marcus, with a question that, we could have started with it, but, why now? Why do we need these prizes now? What's critical about the time that we're in right now in 2022?
So my first reaction to that is we've hit this inflection point that all of us saw happen in 2021. All of a sudden, very unaffordable headsets that didn't even work that well as far as the experience became very cheap and a good experience. So the competition now is creating good market pressures to keep the cost down and the quality up. So something that was only afforded to a big government or a big business a few years ago is now affordable to everyone, including a public school and a low-income community. That's the hardware side of it. At the same time, the platforms, interesting thing happened with these platforms. They went from consumption environments to production environments. So instead of just consuming games, which is kind of our experience with VR for the last decade, all of a sudden you could create things like PowerPoint. It was basically PowerPoint in VR. And they became very inexpensive. The prices of these software platforms were very high, but their business strategies to get eyeballs into these environments. So they're having a land grab. So most of these platforms have come down to the point where you can use them for free. We've done school projects and we haven't paid for software yet. we're using all the free versions. So if you got software that's nominal and it's exceptional, there's a lot of innovation because there's so much VC funding went into this space during COVID because they knew there's the market.
Government money now with
government money. So you got exceptional software now that's got tons of features. People don't even realize the amount of features and functions in these platforms like Engage and others, where you can you can create anything you want that your imagination can come up with, and you don't have to code. So when you ask him about timing, why we're doing it now, a non-coder, an art student from a low-income community in South Central LA, within a day can get upskilled and reskilled to create in these environments and can start producing communications in ways that build empathy, awareness, and education around whatever topic they want, you know? And so that, for us, that's been the inflection point, that it's feasible. And then on top of all that, the SDGs have been around for, you know, for many years now, and you still walk around and people don't know what they are. And even if you don't,
it's probably the highest level of awareness that we've ever seen, but it's still way, way too low.
Totally. And whether you call it the 17 SDGs or not, these are just problems facing humanity, right? Like gender equality and quality education and life below water and sustainable consumption and production. I mean, these are all things that are important to us, but there's no real good way to get an appreciation for them. So we're trying to hit those metrics we saw in PwC study. Like even if we don't get a 4x improvement or a 375% improvement, like you saw in those stats, even just a doubling would be good around getting people aware of what the issues are. And I think what will be interesting, Ori, is between what you're doing and what we're doing, I think timing wise, next June, these might be some really good examples of what an actual quote unquote metaverse is. Because the commercial stuff, people are getting distracted, like I said, seeing metaverse being applied on all these commercial things. I think people will have a disdain for the metaverse because it's not all good. There's a little bit of evil involved with metaverse. But for the good side, I think these initiatives will show, wait a second, I didn't know what a metaverse was, but then I heard about these 17 goals of the UN that I can get into this environment and actually pour it into these 17 topics. And one of them around climate, I can actually see a solution. Wow, what an engaging, interesting way to see this. Now I get what a metaverse
some good.
Yes, I understand what a metaverse is.
Big one. Yeah. Fantastic. Marcus, thank you so much. Again, once again, I recommend you for the initiative and kind of the global perspective you're taking on this and all the effort. Thank you for what you're doing. Any final words before we conclude today?
No, just get in it to win it. That's what we're looking for, is people that are serious, that want to get in this and have fun and create something incredible that you can share with everybody else.
If saving the world is not enough of an incentive for you, here's some money.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thank you all for joining us today. Looking forward to your participation in both programs and seeing the results next June.
Take care, everybody. Hope to see you in Lisbon.
See you in Lisbon.
Yes.
Take care.
Bye-bye.